Dear audience, thank you for being here. My name is Werner Fiebig of Orica, and I'm going to attract your attention for a topic that is keeping the explosives industry and the importers busy for quite some time, has cost them some money, and it will be a challenge for the users of explosives as well in the upcoming months until start of April next year. I'm talking about the track and trace regulations that have been imposed by the EU back in 2008, which are based on a legislation from 1993, which intends to standardize the national regulations of the explosives legal environment in the EU member states to a common set of standards and execution regulations. So, in consequence of that approach, we had standardization on quality standards, how to determine explosives qualities, and we have, as one of the very labor-intensive topics, the need to standardize and implement a tracking and tracing system which allows to trace the whereabouts and the possession of each explosive item, and it is each item from its origin at the factory to its very final use in typically a blast. That EU regulation is then detailed and overlaid by national regulations, explosives laws, laws on keeping explosives registers, and so on. And luckily we had some clarifications on the interpretation of these laws by an organization called FEAM, which is the Federation of European Explosives Manufacturers, which spent quite some time and effort in discussions with the EU Commission on interpreting rules of the directives. And one of the very essential outcomes from that was that we had arrived at a definition of the end user being someone who consumes explosives within his own undertaking. And the FEAM has also come up with a recommendation on a code structure with which the enormous amount of serial numbers that is created by giving each explosive item a unique identification, with which the code standard with which the data can be transferred between the participants in the market, means from supplier through distributors to the final user, to the end user. In practice, since April last year, the explosives industry is marking their products, anything that is larger than 8.5 millimeters in diameter, with unique identification markers. And these marks have to be on each item, so it's each detonator, each cartridge, each spool of detonating cord, and it has to have a corresponding label on the outer packaging, which is typically the box containing a set of cartridges or several bags of detonators and so on. The interesting part and the challenging part for the explosives consumers is coming these days, effective and to be in place by 5th of April next year, and that is that they have to trace the whereabouts and the possessions of each of these explosives items within their undertaking, or as long as it is in their possession. However, as I said, as an end user, you only have the obligation to record what gets into your possession, which is into your magazine, for example, and which you ultimately consume. If you hand it over to several responsible persons inside your organization, you are not necessarily required to trace that unless you store it in between. Now, what is the process implementing in addition to what we have? Clearly, it is an additional requirement to cope with a tremendously increased number of serial numbers current historical tracing is done and identification is done on box level typically, so it's in an outer packaging level. But now we look at the content in that box towards each item. At the same time, a number of the other legal requirements that exist in the environment still will be there and will be unchanged, and that is anything that is related to transportation, anything that is related to change of ownership in product. And here's the distinct difference between the track and trace directives and the commercial regulations. It's about possession, it's not about ownership. So in essence, anything that is related to transport and ownership will continue on a paper-based version as it is today. And we have to provide for a means to transfer the serial numbers associated with such a shipment. And typically that would work by maintaining. There's a beamer. Yeah, I'm lost here. It's a red one, probably. Yeah, it's a red one. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. By maintaining all manuals, paper processes as is, and adding a data handling capacity, including a data transfer capability to cope with the additional amount of serial numbers generated according to the track and trace directive. We have teamed up as Orica with a mobility provider, having solutions in place which rely on equipment, front-end equipment in the magazines, scanners, which can be connected to the internet or via a GSM function to a network, and exchange data with a central data storage in a cloud. Consequence of this is very small equipment front end, no software to be installed on any local computers, and only data transfer of events and data to be stored for and selected for reporting between the devices and the cloud. The product will have the name Movica TT for track and trace, and it is, because of this almost hardware-free setting, it is definitely a lean solution. We have to distinguish between two environments or two activities. One is what happens internally at the consumer of explosives. So whatever he gets into his system from a supplier needs to be recorded, scanned, control scanned. So he has a complete inventory of all the items he has in his magazines, and he needs to check that this data is consistent with the data set that the supplier has been sending to him in an advanced shipping notice, an ASN, containing all the serial numbers. If this new possessor of explosives decides to sell explosives on, he then has to repeat the same process as the supplier did. He has to scan anything that goes out. He has to generate a list of these serial numbers, and he has to electronically convey that to the next receiver, to his customer, who then has to have a system to manage these data and store them for 10 years. Like every party involved in this entire chain needs to store the data for 10 years and needs to maintain access to the data for that period, 24 hours, 7 days, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, as the regulation says, in case the authorities want to know details on the whereabouts of these materials. The front end will be standardized industrial scanners, rugged scanners. We will assign two models, a very rugged, little bit heavier one, and a smaller, more PDA type scanner that will be able to do the data transfer and will be the interface for the user at the magazine to record the in and outs of the explosives. It must not only be at the magazine, it can of course also be at face, underground, or on the bench in the surface mining environment. Just to give you an impression why such a device setting and such an environment is needed, if you would transport the serial numbers classically, it would be this bunch for an average 2.5 ton blast. And for 84 pages, which then would have to be noted in one or other way, manually or semi-manually. The solution is designed to be quite simple and quite intuitive to the operator, so we have broken it down into a number of basic process elements which typically occur in a storage process and handling out process. So that's receiving goods, that's returning goods to a supplier, that's handing out goods for consumption, taking it back from consumption if not used, which is called back to stock. It's destroying goods, for instance, if you have losses in your stock keeping or outdated products. It's review counting, inventory counting as required also by the commercial laws, and also to make sure that your storage quantity does not exceed your permit level. And it is a number of system functions you need to be an active user of the software. And of course, there's a web interface which you can use from any PC with internet connection to access your data, to run your daily or weekly or monthly reports, and to update your master data if you want to have more details than just the plain information on name of product and serial numbers. The outlook for this is that Orica TT will be a lean solution to end users and distributors to comply with the directive. It will allow not to interfere with the commercial existing ERP systems. And it will be able to generate the necessary reporting and stock bookkeeping processes as required in various countries. And we will have it in the market available at the end of this summer 2014. Thank you.